There's a lot of comparison between Obama and Lincoln.
Yeah.
Particularly, they talked about having a cabinet of rivals,
Yes.
and also being at such a critical moment. Of course, he's also compared with FDR.
Sure.
One of the things Obama's talked a lot about is my dream doesn't have to negate your dream. We're all Americans. The unity of everyone towards a common goal. Lincoln fought a civil war.
Yes.
And there are forces, certainly, we've seen over the last 8 years, who certainly believe their dreams can negate other dreams.
Oh, yeah.
There's a fight to be had here.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
not everyone's going to be on the same side.
No, that's right. And it's I think you have to sort of pick your opportunities. I thought it was fabulous in his speech in Grant Park that he said two things. He talked about gay and straight people. He used those words and mentioned that they were all part of this collective that he's embracing. He also said, I'm going to do some things you're not going to like, which I think is important for us to understand, that he sees the road to be one that's going to involve some compromise and is going to involve some choices that are not going to make me happy. Then, after saying the gays and the straights are part of this coalition that we're pulling together, he appoints Rick Warren to do the invocation and potentially elevates him.
Just for anyone that knows, Rick Warren is an evangelical, I believe.
A fundamentalist evangelical,
but very actively against
anti-gay
marriage and
sure.
gay rights.
And has also said some pretty horrific things about other things, like taking out leaders of nations that we oppose. A sort of unchristian position, it seems to me. But so you have to kind of see all these things and figure out how they fit into the...
Well, this is where I'm getting at this issue. There's a point where having everyone united, showing that you're so ecumenical.
Right.
Lincoln wasn't so ecumenical.
Gotcha.
Lincoln, identified enemies, he fought those enemies. He didn't invite them all to his party.
You have to be willing, I think, to be a true leader. You have to be willing to offend some people. You have to be willing to stand up and say, I'm sorry, I know you're not going to like this, but this is the way we're going because this is...
And then the question is going to be, is he going to do what the traditional Democratic leadership do, which is it's okay to offend the left because you got them anyway.
That's right. Yes.
So if you're going to offend somebody,
sure,
you might as well defend your core constituency.
And a troubling hint in that direction is the selection of Rick Warren, because the same gay community that he reached out to and that he counts on has been deeply offended by that. So, the truth, I suppose, lies somewhere in the future. We'll figure it out.
What will be litmus tests for you? If you had to say, pick three things that you will judge this first 4 years of Obama, and you'll say, okay, this was a presidency that took us forward into a direction I like, and on these three issues, or if he doesn't, what are the tests?
Close Guantanamo. He's effectively done it by naming Panetta, but by absolutely decrying torture and determining the United States will never again use that in any way, support the use of torture. I just heard, whether it's true or not, remains to be seen. I just heard that he is open to speaking to Hamas with regard to the current horror in Gaza, or with regard to the whole horror of the Israeli-Palestinian tensions over time. That to me would be an extraordinary step, Jimmy Carter-esque, and Jimmy Carter, as we all know, has been excoriated for having the courage to do what he's done, which I think is long overdue and urgently necessary. In those areas, I think those would be important tests. Domestically, supporting the EFCL, the
Employee Free Choice Act.
Employee Free Choice Act. Demonstrating support for the working person in this country, demonstrating serious support for raising the level of the minimum wage and moving it into a living wage category, and putting people in a position where they can actually have hope to be able to survive and raise a family and have a meaningful life as working people. Elevate the status of working people again, and do away with all this cushiness for the corporations and for Wall Street and for these. Now, I say do away. It would take a revolution to do away with it, but to actually make some serious steps in the direction of fairness in the economic world.
Mike, one of the issues that's you've been most associated with and dear to your heart is the whole issue of capital punishment. And Barack Obama's position on capital punishment is not close to yours. So how do you resolve these two issues?
Well, I think for capital punishment is the default position for most politicians today, whether they are actually for it or not. The few really courageous ones like Russ Feingold and Tom Harkin and Pat Leahy and a few others who have come out in opposition to it are the rare example. But when President-elect Obama was in the state legislature in Illinois, he was helpful in moving Governor Ryan's attempt to constrain the use of the death penalty. He has recently appointed Eric Holder as his Attorney General designate, and Eric Holder is an outspoken opponent of the use of the death penalty. So I think what we're talking about is moving away from the kind of kill them quick and kill them regardless of guilt, innocence, or what have you, that the Bush administration was promoting. And I think all of that, connected with the work that we in the abolition community are doing, plus the things, for example, the abolition of in New Jersey and the work that's being done in Maryland and New Mexico and some other states now, I think it's moving us in the right direction. And I think Obama's presidency can facilitate that move in ways that don't require him to come out and say, I oppose the death penalty.
So just as a final question, you've been in media your whole life, mostly on the fiction side.
Yes.
But what do you make of television news today? Certainly we witnessed some of its most abysmal days during the Bush era.
We did indeed.
Has anything changed? What are your expectations?
Well, you know, it's changing. It's changing thanks to you. It's changing because of the pressure that's being put on it by people on the web and people who are willing to stand up and say, there's an alternative. There is the possibility of telling the truth if you're not constrained by commercial requirements. So I'm hopeful, not for television news per se, but for the alternative voices that are coming up. I think that the American people are going to more and more move toward looking, as we did during the time of the terrible work of the mainstream press. We go to the alternative press and we find a more likely analysis of what's going on. So earlier I mentioned my frustration at the lack of ethics on the part of the media in general at critical times in our history, giving us conclusions rather than giving us facts and allowing us to draw our own conclusions. I'm finding great hope that as a result of the work you're doing and the work that other people are trying, that we have the opportunity for more access to the truth.
Thank you very much, and thank you very much for joining us. And on the heels of such a completely unabashed plug for The Real News, don't forget the donate button. And quid pro quo, Mike Farrell's new book. You can find this if you donate. This book will be available to you as a premium, and it's also available through Amazon. Thank you very much for joining us.
Donate today and receive a new documentary film available to members of the Real News Network. The History of the National Security State with legendary author Gore Vidal. Bonus features of the DVD include an in-depth response to Vidal from ex-CIA analyst Ray McGovern, who served under 7 U.S. presidents, an exclusive interview with Colin Powell's former Chief of Staff Larry Wilkerson, and an insightful interview with oil policy analyst Antonia Juhas.
The news magazine of the screen. Living glimpses of history in the making.
Hollywood and Washington is a symbiotic relationship. They both deal with illusions. reality doesn't often play much of a part. I think I saw through the myth of the Cold War almost from the beginning. I was a Washington political kid from a political family. Roosevelt first had radio because he had this great speaking voice and everyone liked to hear. Truman proceeded to break every arrangement that Roosevelt had set up for a peaceful coexistence. And Truman thought that it would be a good idea. Why not just stay armed all the time? And then he devised the national security state. You've got to go up and swear allegiance to the United States or else you're a commie. I mean, we had imported fascism. We get Dwight Eisenhower, who said that we have this great military industrial complex. It is a dangerous thing. And he said this is going to change everything. And the way our country's governed is going to change us politically. Along comes Jack Kennedy, who wanted to make his mark, believed in the Cold War. But he said, in this kind of politics, it is the appearance of things that matters. I think everybody should take a sober look at the world about us. The national security state still exists, only it isn't communism anymore, it's terrorism. This is the most serious thing that has happened in the history of the United States. Knowledge is power. We need an honest news system.
We need the real news.
This is the sort of thing we can build right now without anyone else's permission from the government or from the business community. It's the power's in our hands.
If we're not going to sleepwalk into more wars, we think we need to start with a television news network that won't bow to pressure and has the courage to seek facts. And that means independent economics. And that's why we need you.
Make a tax-deductible donation now of at least $10 a month or a one-time give of at least $75. As a thank you for your support, we will send you the new documentary film, The History of the National Security State.